The Halcyon Museum lost power for 40 seconds. When the lights returned, one gallery had changed forever. Inside a locked glass room lay collector Everett Shaw. 10 seconds earlier, security swore that room was empty. No door had opened and no alarm had sounded. Yet a dead man now lay beneath the museum lights. Detective Mara Voss arrived before midnight. The storm outside had already flooded the lower streets. Everett Shaw owned nearly everything inside the building. That night he planned to announce a devastating sale. Curators, investors, and family members all had reasons to hate him. Mara began with the impossible room. Gallery 7 was a transparent cube of reinforced glass. Only door used a magnetic security lock. The access log showed no entry after 11:20. The polished floor showed no hidden trapdoor. 4 cameras watched the gallery from different angles. 11:46, the room was completely empty. Then the museum lost power. 3 seconds later, Everett's body appeared inside. The ink was dry despite the storm outside. Ron's exhibition card rested near his hand. His expensive watch still showed 11:32. Nothing heavy had been moved inside the room. Mara noticed one stranger detail instead. Everett's shoes carried pale grey construction dust. The dust did not belong inside the public museum. Mara asked where renovation work was still happening. Chief Curator Lillian Cross pointed toward the West Service Wing. Everett had argued with workers there before dinner. Mara entered the dark service corridor alone. Behind temporary walls stood another glass exhibition cube. It looked almost identical to Gallery 7. The service cube's bronze frame was slightly scratched. Artwork beside its base. Fresh grease marked a circular steel track beneath the floor. The entire structure could rotate on a hidden platform. The Halcyon Museum had once used rotating galleries for exhibitions. Mara requested the original architectural plans. I-7 and the service cube shared one massive turntable. Rotated halfway, the rooms exchanged positions. No gallery door needed to open at all. The room itself could move. Blackout, guests saw the empty public cube. In darkness, the hidden platform could rotate. Afterward, the service cube appeared in its place. And nobody needed to enter Gallery 7 after 11:20. Mara searched the service cube carefully. One corner contained Everett's broken cufflink. A thin line of dried mud crossed the black floor. His shoes matched both the mud and construction dust. Everett had entered the service wing before the blackout. Someone killed him there, then moved the entire room. Now Mara needed to know who could operate the turntable. The questioning began inside the sculpture hall. Lillian Cross feared Everett would sell the museum collection. She admitted begging him to reconsider that afternoon. His son Adrian expected the sale money personally. They claimed he spent the blackout beside 6 guests. Malcolm Reed had financed the museum expansion. Everett planned to cancel their agreement that night. The final suspect was architect Elena Ward, who had supervised Halcyon's recent restoration project. Elena wore a pale grey coat and carried rolled blueprints. She insisted the old turntable no longer worked. Mara asked when she last inspected its motor. Elena said 3 weeks earlier. Mara entered the mechanical room beneath the galleries. The turntable motor was old but recently serviced. Fresh copper filings glittered beneath the control panel. The safety fuse had been replaced with a modern part. Someone had quietly restored the system. The museum blackout provided perfect cover. But power loss should have stopped the motor completely. Mara found a portable battery pack behind the wall. It could drive the turntable for exactly one rotation. The battery belonged to the restoration contractors. When Mara noticed a museum inventory sticker beneath it, the battery had been moved from the security workshop. Someone wanted Elena blamed for restoration equipment. Mara returned to Everett's bronze exhibition card. It's not from Gallery 7. The serial mark belonged to the sculpture archive. Only curator Lillian regularly handled those cards. Suspicion shifted again. Mara refused the easiest answer. She examined the card under angled light. A faint pencil impression crossed its back. It showed measurements for the rotating platform. Those measurements matched Elena's original blueprints. Lillian could never have produced them alone. Someone had used the card as scrap paper during planning. Insert Elena's blueprint tube next. One sheet was missing from the numbered sequence. Another page carried pressure marks from heavy writing. Mara shaded the paper with graphite. A hidden diagram slowly appeared underneath. It showed the turntable, battery, and blackout time. The diagram was one final notation. 11:32, service wing meeting. That was the time frozen on Everett's watch. Where I finally understood the entire sequence. Elena lured Everett into the unfinished service gallery. She confronted him over the museum's planned destruction. Everett intended to cancel her contract and blame her for costs. The argument turned violent, and Everett fell against a steel frame. Elena panicked, then saw a way to hide the truth. Placed the body inside the second glass cube. She restored the old turntable and prepared the battery. 11:47, she triggered the museum blackout. Darkness, the two galleries silently exchanged positions. 40 seconds later, the lights returned. Everyone saw a body inside a room nobody had entered. Locked door, cameras, and alarms were all truthful. They were simply watching the wrong room. Elena stared at the recovered blueprint and stopped speaking. Police arrested her before the floodwaters reached the museum steps. At dawn, Mara stood beside the motionless glass cube. The impossible room had never been entered. It had been moved.
At midnight, every window of the Grand Meridian went dark. Only room 404 remained glowing above the storm. Inside stood media tycoon Alistair Vane, apparently still alive. Dozens of guests watched him through the glass wall. He raised one hand and closed the curtains himself. 3 minutes later, a scream came from the locked suite. Detective Mara Voss reached the door almost immediately. The electronic lock showed no entry after midnight. The balcony door was sealed by the violent storm. When security opened room 404, Alistair was already dead. His body lay beside the grand piano. The medical examiner estimated he died much earlier. At least 20 minutes before everyone saw him standing. That meant the man behind the glass was not alive. The hotel erupted with rumors of a ghost. Mara ignored them and examined the glass wall. Guests could see silhouettes but not fine facial detail. The curtains were made from silver reflective fabric. Mara then inspected the lighting above the windows. 3 hidden spotlights had been aimed toward the glass. Tonight, their angles had been changed. Someone had turned the room into a stage. The figure everyone saw may have been an image. Mara searched the floor behind the curtains. A narrow projector housing sat beneath a decorative cabinet, but its ventilation grill was still warm. Someone had secretly restored the machine. Mara found a memory cartridge inside. The recording showed Alistair pacing near the window. He raised his hand and closed the curtains. It matched exactly what the guests had witnessed. The supposedly live sighting was pre-recorded. His wristwatch showed 12:03, but the watch battery had been removed. The stop time was another deliberate lie. Beside the piano stood a shattered crystal glass. Someone had staged the entire room after death. The investigation moved into the hotel's private lounge. Alistair's daughter, Seraphine, feared losing control of his company. Hotel director Marcus Vale faced bankruptcy without Alistair's money. His personal videographer, Theo Quinn, controlled the presentation equipment. Each suspect had access to room 44 earlier that evening. Mara questioned Theo about the hidden projector first. He admitted restoring it for a private rehearsal, but he claimed Alistair ordered the work. Then Mara noticed one missing camera battery. The battery model matched the projector's improvised power unit. Theo immediately became the strongest suspect. Mara searched his equipment case carefully. The missing battery slot was covered in fresh dust. It had been empty for several weeks. Someone wanted the evidence to point toward him. Mara returned to room 404 and studied the pre-recorded footage. Alistair's reflection appeared in the dark window behind him, but the reflection moved 1 second too early. The video itself had been manipulated. Someone combined separate recordings into one believable scene that required access to Alistair's private archive. Seraphine Nolan, Alistair's executive assistant, Mira Cole. She claimed she spent the evening organizing contracts downstairs. Mara requested the hotel's internal network logs. At 11:26, someone accessed Alistair's video archive. The request came from room 404. But Alistair's device was already disconnected then. The login used Mira's administrative credentials. Mira insisted her password must have been stolen. Instead, she examined the suite's grand piano. One bench leg had been recently repaired. Fresh varnish covered a narrow crack. Inside the hollow leg, Mara found a second memory cartridge. It contained an unedited camera clip from earlier. Alistair was arguing fiercely with Mira. He accused her of copying confidential financial files. Mira answered that the files proved years of fraud. Alistair threatened to blame everything on her. He planned to announce her arrest at midnight. Security records showed Mira left 4 before 11:30. No one entered afterward. The suite door automatically locked when it closed. Mara examined the electronic lock history again. One event had been classified as maintenance. At 11:32, the system entered service mode. That command could be sent remotely from the hotel office. Mira had used her credentials there earlier. But another person knew those same controls. Hotel director Marcus Vale. Mara searched Marcus's office first. His terminal showed no access to room 404. Then she checked the backup maintenance console. Its keyboard carried fresh silver fabric fiber. The same fibers came from room 404's curtains. Someone had handled both locations wearing the same coat. Mira's coat was charcoal gray. Marcus wore black wool. Seraphine wore a silver evening coat. The fibers matched Seraphine, not Mira. Mara finally saw the real structure of the crime. Seraphine had used Mira's credentials to create the fake trail. She accessed the video archive from room 404. She staged the projector and reflective curtains. Then she switched the lock into remote service mode. After Alistair died, she left before 11:30. From the hotel office, she triggered the pre-recorded performance. Guests watched a dead man appear to move again. Then the curtains closed exactly on schedule. Seraphine remotely ended service mode afterward. The room became perfectly locked with the body inside. She planted evidence pointing first toward Theo, then Mira. Her motive was hidden inside Alistair's new will. He planned to sell the company and disinherit her completely. Before the gathered guests, Mara reconstructed every false moment. The ghost in room 404 was only edited light. The locked door was only software and timing. But the silver fibers were never meant to matter. Seraphine stared at the curtains and finally stopped denying it. Police escorted her through the silent ballroom before dawn. Out the storm began fading over the city. No ghost had walked behind the glass that night. Only a recording had borrowed a dead man's final silhouette. And that illusion nearly became the perfect murder.
St. Verity Abbey had been silent for almost 30 years. Its private chapel opened on Lucien Crow's midnight recital. Outside, freezing rain struck the stained glass windows without pause. Lucien was a famous composer, collector, and ruthless musical patron. That night, he promised to reveal a long-lost requiem. He claimed the score would change the history of sacred music. Shortly before midnight, Lucien entered the chapel alone. He carried the manuscript and the chapel's only iron key. Then he locked the carved oak door from the inside. Detective Mara Voss waited among the guests in the cloister. At midnight, the pipe organ suddenly filled the abbey with music. For 7 minutes, no one disturbed the private performance. Then one violent final note echoed through the stone corridor. A heavy crash followed and the music stopped instantly. Mara reached the chapel door before the frightened guests. The iron key remained visible side beneath the lock. Servants broke the door while thunder shook the old rafters. Lucy beside the organ bench, completely motionless. The manuscript remained open above the ivory key. A tiny puncture marked the tip of his right index finger. No blade, needle, or poisoned container could be found. The stained glass windows were sealed behind iron frames. The organ pipes rose against a solid wall of stone. Yet the organ had continued playing after Lucien collapsed. Several guests whispered that the requiem had killed its performer. Mara ignored them and examined the organ mechanism carefully. Behind the keyboard, a brass music cylinder was still turning. The organ could play automatically when the cylinder was engaged. Lucien had not performed the music everyone heard outside. Someone had created a false 7-minute timeline of his death. Mara inspected every ivory key beneath the open manuscript. One key felt warmer and looser than the other. She removed the key and found a narrow spring beneath it. Inside the spring waited a retracting steel needle. Pressing the key forced the needle through a tiny opening. Releasing it pulled the point immediately back into darkness. The weapon had never left the locked chapel. A trace of coated the needle's narrow base. Mara identified the substance as a facting nerve. The killer knew exactly which note Lucien would press first. The open manuscript provided the next important clue. The opening chord had been rewritten in darker black ink. One unnecessary note had been added beneath Lucien's marking. That added note matched the key containing the hidden needle. Someone had altered the score after Lucien last examined it. The investigation moved into the Abbey's old chapter house. Helena Crow, Lucien's widow, wore gray and showed little sorrow. She admitted Lucien planned to leave her nothing. His nephew Daniel feared losing control of the family estate. He claimed he spent midnight speaking with 3 guests. Father Matthias, the Abbey caretaker, controlled every chapel key. He insisted they never left his belt. Final suspect was Iris Bell, the organ's young restorer. She wore a deep teal coat and carried a leather toolkit. Iris said her restoration ended 2 days before the recital. She denied touching the manuscript or changing any organ key. Mara asked who had engaged the automatic music cylinder. Iris explained Lucien often tested it before private performances. Then Mara noticed on Iris's left glove. Iris said she had repaired labels inside the pipe chamber. Mara returned to the chapel and compared both ink samples. The added note contained the same metallic blue particles. That rare ink came from Iris' personal restoration pen. Still, ink alone could not prove she built the weapon. Mara opened the organ's lower maintenance panel. Fresh pale wood dust covered the older black interior. One screw had been replaced with a slightly smaller head. A strand of teal wool clung beneath its sharp edge. Iris argued that her coat fibers could remain from earlier work. Mara agreed and continued searching the automatic cylinder. A thin cord connected the cylinder to a delayed release weight. The weight had been set to drop exactly at midnight. When it fell, the organ began playing without human hand. Lucien's first movement toward the altered cord triggered the needle. The poison acted before the automatic music had finished. The guests outside heard 7 minutes of perfect mechanical act. Mara examined Lucien's private correspondence for a motive. One letter promised a wealthy buyer the lost requiem. Another ordered Iris to surrender every original. The supposedly ancient music was not ancient at all. Iris had composed it during the organ's restoration. Lucien planned to present her work as a historic discovery. He would gain fame while Iris received neither credit nor payment. When she objected, Lucien threatened to end her career. But Mara required one final connection. She inspected the leather toolkit beside Iris. One compartment should have contained a fine voicing needle. The slot was empty, but a broken clasp remained inside. Its shape matched the retracting needle hidden beneath the key. Iris said the tool had disappeared several weeks earlier. Mara placed the clasp the weapon's engraved base. Both pieces formed one continuous decorative pattern. The murder needle had been cut from Iris's missing tool. Mara reconstructed the crime step by step. Iris entered the chapel during the final restoration inspection. She replaced one organ key and installed the hidden spring. Then she altered the manuscript with her metallic blue ink. She connected the music cylinder to the delayed release weight. Lucien later entered alone and locked the chapel door himself. He opened the score and prepared to perform at midnight. The falling weight started the automatic requiem behind him. Lucien pressed the added opening note and triggered the needle. The toxin entered his finger before he understood the danger. He collapsed while the organ continued its mechanical performance. Iris remained by Whit's sides for 7 minutes. She believed the music would establish a perfect time of death. But the loose key, altered ink, and broken tool remained. Iris stared at the stolen manuscript in Mara's. Her calm expression finally gave way to bitter exhaustion. She admitted Lucien had intended to erase her completely. Police escorted her through the cloister before the storm ended. Mara returned alone and stopped the turning brass cylinder. The abbey became silent for the first time that night. No cursed requiem had killed Lucien Crow. No spirit had played the organ behind the locked door. There was only stolen music and a hidden mechanical needle. The false performance had concealed the true moment of death. But one unnecessary exposed the entire design. By dawn, rainwater shone across the abbey courtyard. The final music faded, but the evidence remained perfectly clear.
Blackmere Observatory stood alone above the cliffs. That night, the sea wind shook every window. Inside, 6 guests waited beneath a glass dome. Their host was Professor Adrian Kells. He was brilliant, proud, and deeply feared. At midnight, a rare comet would appear. Adrian promised a revelation no one expected. He would unveil a lost astronomical proof. He also carried a sealed leather notebook. Shortly before midnight, he entered alone. He climbed into the upper observatory chamber. He carried the notebook and one brass key. Then he locked the door from inside. The guests remained below in nervous silence. Detective Mara Voss watched everything carefully. At 12th, the dome shutters opened above. The telescope began turning with a low hum. Everyone assumed Adrian had started his demonstration. For several minutes, the machine kept moving. Then a loud crash came from upstairs. Mara ran for the locked chamber. The brass key still lay inside. No one answered her call. So the servants broke the door. Adrian lay beside the telescope platform. His notebook had fallen near one hand. A tiny puncture marked his left thumb. No knife or needle could be found. The high dome windows were sealed shut. The stone walls offered no escape. Yet the telescope had kept moving. Some guests whispered about a cursed comet. Mara ignored them and studied the room. The telescope tracker was still engaged. A brass focus wheel sat near the eyepiece. One small cap on the wheel looked loose. Fresh black oil glimmered around its rim. Adrian's gloves were perfectly clean. He had not repaired it himself. Mara looked at the wound again. The puncture was neat and shallow. It matched the height of the wheel. She removed the loose brass cap. A hidden spring waited inside. So did a thin steel needle. Turning the wheel pushed the needle outward. Releasing it pulled the point back. The weapon had never left the room. It had hidden inside the telescope. A pale residue coated the needle base. Mara suspected fast-acting. But one question still remained. Why did the telescope keep moving? Behind the mount hung a weighted chain. The tracker used a clockwork drive. Once wound, it moved by itself. The machine created a false timeline. Adrian likely died much earlier. Mara opened the fallen notebook. Its final page showed comet calculation. One figure had been changed recently. The new number was written in silver ink. That same silver ink marked a star chart. The corrected line led to that telescope wheel. Someone guided Adrian to use it first. The questioning began in the lower library. Evelyn Kells admitted fearing Adrian's announcement. She believed he would cut her out. Leo Kells owed money across the city. He wanted Adrian's support and permission. Mr. Haynes guarded the observatory key. He swore the brass key stayed upstairs. The final suspect was Nora Finn. She had restored the telescope recently. She wore a teal coat and gloves. She answered calmly and very precisely. Nora said the telescope was fully repaired. She denied touching Adrian's notebook. Mara noticed silver ink on Nora's cuff. Nora blamed an old calibration pen. The answer sounded possible but careful. Mara searched Nora's workbench. One tool slot stood completely empty. It should have held a fine gauge pin. Nearby lay a cut piece of spring metal. It matched the spring inside the wheel. A tiny vial rack had one gap. The missing vial label read belladonna extract. Mara now had method and poison. She still needed the motive. Adrian's desk supplied the answer. Hidden letters lay under the blotter. They praised Nora's original comet work. But Adrian signed every page himself. Another letter promised a foreign buyer. Adrian planned to sell the discovery alone. He would claim Nora's calculations as his own. He also planned to dismiss her publicly. The sealed notebook was his final betrayal. Mara returned to the observatory chamber. She examined the tracker chain closely. Its weight had been freshly wound. Only a restorer knew that mechanism. Nora had worked there for weeks. Mara found one more clue. A teal fiber clung inside the wheel. It matched Nora's coat exactly. Before everyone, Mara rebuilt the crime. Nora entered during afternoon maintenance. She hid the needle in the focus wheel. She loaded it with belladonna poison. She rewrote one number in silver ink. That change forced Adrian's first movement. She wound the tracker before leaving. Later, Adrian entered and locked himself inside. He opened the dome for the comet. Then he reached for the focus wheel. The hidden needle pierced his thumb. He collapsed while the tracker kept moving. And the false motion fooled everyone. Greyhaven Lighthouse had guarded the Black Coast for a century. That night, a violent storm swallowed the surrounding cliffs. Inside, 8 guests gathered beneath the rotating lantern beam. Their host was Cedric Vale, a celebrated optical engineer. He planned to reveal a revolutionary lighthouse lens. Cedric claimed the invention would make him internationally famous. His young assistant, Celia Frost, remained unusually silent. Shortly before midnight, Cedric climbed toward the lantern chamber. He carried a leather folder and one brass key. At the top, he locked the iron door from inside. Detective Mara Voss watched the staircase carefully. At midnight, the great lighthouse lamp began rotating faster. Everyone believed Cedric had started his demonstration. For 5 minutes, the bright beam continued circling normally. Then a metallic crash echoed from above. The lantern beam kept moving despite the sudden silence. Mara rushed up the narrow spiral staircase. The brass key remained visible inside the locked chamber. The caretaker helped break the heavy iron door. Cedric lay beside the brass control pedestal. His leather folder had fallen open near the railing. One hand rested beneath a polished adjustment lever. A tiny puncture marked the center of his palm. No knife, needle, or weapon remained nearby. The glass lantern windows were sealed against the storm. The exterior balcony was covered in untouched rainwater. Yet the lighthouse beam continued rotating above the body. Several guests whispered that the sea had claimed Cedric. Mara ignored them and examined the control pedestal. The polished adjustment lever felt slightly loose. Fresh oil shone around its dark wooden grip. He had operated the lever with his bare hand. Mara removed the wooden grip carefully. A compressed spring waited inside the hollow handle. At its center rested a retracting steel point. Pulling the lever forced the point through a tiny hole. Releasing it drew the point back into the handle. The weapon had never left the sealed chamber. A cloudy residue covered the steel point. Mara recognized signs of a rapid botanical poison. Someone knew Cedric would pull that lever first. The fallen leather folder contained calibration diagram. One adjustment arrow had been added in blue chalk. It directed Cedric toward the modified lever immediately. The original diagram showed a different starting control. Someone altered the instructions after Cedric reviewed them. Mara then studied the rotating lantern mechanism. A heavy counterweight moved slowly inside the central shaft. Once released, it powered the lens without human assistance. The moving light created a false timeline. Cedric had died before the beam stopped turning. The questioning began inside the lighthouse keeper's dining room. Marion Vale, Cedric's sister, feared losing the family property. She admitted Cedric planned to sell Greyhaven Lighthouse. Thomas Reed, a wealthy investor, had funded the new lens. He claimed Cedric had hidden important financial records. Old keeper Jonah Bell controlled every lighthouse key. He insisted the lantern key never left Cedric's possession. The final suspect was Celia Frost, Cedric's assistant. She wore a dark sea green coat and black gloves. Celia said she completed the lens repairs that afternoon. She denied touching Cedric's calibration diagram. Mara noticed pale blue chalk on Celia's sleeve. Celia blamed the marks on routine workshop measurements. Mara searched the optical workshop beneath the tower. One compartment in Celia's tool chest was empty. It should have contained a fine clockmaker's spring. Nearby, a shortened wooden handle lay beneath cloth. Its carved pattern matched the modified control lever. A small bottle rack contained one empty space. The missing bottle had stored concentrated plant extract. Mara now understood the weapon and poison. But motives still remained hidden inside Cedric's folder. Several contracts credited Cedric alone for the new lens. Technical sketches showed Celia's initials beneath erased ink. Another letter promised the design to an overseas buyer. Cedric planned to sell the invention without her permission. He would receive the money and dismiss Celia afterward. When she protested, he threatened to ruin her career. Celia possessed knowledge, access, and a powerful motive. Still, Mara needed one final physical connection. She returned to the loose lever handle. A strand of sea green wool remained beneath the spring. It matched the inside lining of Celia's coat. Celia argued that she worked near the controls daily. Mara agreed, then revealed another hidden clue. The blue chalk arrow contained traces of lamp oil. Only the chalk near the lantern mechanism carried oil. Someone drew the arrow while installing the poisoned handle. Mara gathered every suspect beneath the rotating beam. She reconstructed the locked room murder step by step. Celia entered the lantern chamber during afternoon repairs. She replaced the control grip with her hollow version. Inside it, she installed the poisoned retracting point. Then she altered Cedric's diagram with blue chalk. She wound the counterweight before leaving the chamber. Later, Cedric climbed upstairs and locked himself inside. He opened the folder and followed the false instruction. His bare palm closed around the modified lever. The hidden point pierced him when he pulled it. The poison acted before he understood the danger. Cedric collapsed beside the control pedestal. Meanwhile, the counterweight kept the lantern beam moving. Everyone below believed the demonstration was still continuing. Celia remained among them with perfect witnesses. But the wool fiber chalk and carved handle survived. Celia stared at the contracts inside Cedric's folder. Her controlled expression finally broke into exhausted anger. She admitted Cedric planned to erase her completely. Police escorted her down the lighthouse stairs before dawn. The storm weakened as they crossed the wet courtyard. Mara returned alone to the lantern chamber. She stopped the counterweight and silenced the mechanism. No ghost had moved the lighthouse beam. No curse had sealed the killer outside the room. There was only stolen work and a hidden poisoned lever. The moving light concealed the true moment of death. But one blue arrow revealed the entire design. At sunrise, Greyhaven's beam finally became still. The sea remained dark, but the mystery was finished.
On winter's first night, Ravenhall Manor hosted a private gathering. Outside, heavy snow buried the road and silenced the forest. Inside, 12 guests dined beneath chandeliers and ancestral portraits. Their host, Dr. Julian Harrow, was a brilliant, feared botanist. He promised to reveal a discovery worth an enormous fortune. Before midnight, Harrow left dinner and entered his glass conservatory. He ordered servants to lock the outer hall behind him. Minutes later, a terrible scream shattered the ballroom music. The guests rushed over and found the conservatory doors locked. Through glass, they watched Harrow collapse beside the white orchid. They broke the doors open, but Harrow was already dead. His face was pale, with one hand clutching his throat. An overturned chair lay beside tables covered in laboratory notes. A shattered silver watch rested near his polished black shoes. Thick frost sealed every conservatory window from the inside. Outside, untouched snow surrounded every wall without footprints. No weapon, intruder, or hidden passage appeared anywhere inside. Detective Mara Voss arrived before the blizzard closed the road. The room smelled of damp soil, smoke, and sweet perfume. At first, Harrow's death seemed to be caused by poison. Yet no glass, needle, powder, or poisoned food remained. Only the white orchid stood untouched beneath a brass lamp. Voss crouched beside Harrow and examined his broken pocket watch. Its hands had stopped at precisely 11:43. Yet its dry, clean mechanism was still working perfectly. Someone stopped the hands, then deliberately smashed the glass. Therefore, the apparent time of death had been staged. Voss noticed a thin burn circling Harrow's right wrist. Nearby, a copper watering pipe vanished beneath the floor. The pipe connected every flower bed to the central boiler. Normally, warm vapor protected the conservatory's delicate tropical plants. That night, however, the pipe felt cold through her glove. Someone had disabled the heating shortly before Harrow's murder. Voss questioned everyone inside Ravenhall's dark wood-paneled library. Lady Evelyn, Harrow's sister, admitted fearing his announcement. She believed Julian planned to sell their family estate immediately. Professor Crane insisted their valuable research belonged equally to him. Thomas, the young gardener, said Harrow threatened to dismiss him. The housekeeper confessed several keys had disappeared that afternoon. One guest remained unnaturally calm through every uncomfortable question. She was Clara Bell, Harrow's quiet personal assistant. Clara claimed she spent the evening copying letters upstairs. Voss trusted calm witnesses less than visibly frightened ones. She returned alone and inspected every label in the conservatory. One label beneath the white orchid had been recently replaced. Its handwriting was neat, but the scientific name was wrong. Expert botanist Harrow would never make such a simple mistake. Beneath the false label, Voss discovered a narrow metal switch. It controlled a hidden cabinet inside the flower stand. Crane explained Harrow used the cabinet during private presentations. It released warm mist around rare plants for dramatic effect. Yet police found the cabinet's mist reservoir completely empty. On its brass nozzle, Voss discovered faint crystalline residue. It carried the same sweet scent lingering throughout the room. The substance was vaporized plant toxin, not ordinary perfume. Heated into mist, it attacked the lungs within seconds. Harrow had unknowingly activated the hidden device himself. The killer never needed to enter the locked conservatory. Someone had filled the hidden reservoir before dinner began. Then they replaced the orchid label, concealing the control switch. When Harrow pressed it, the cabinet released deadly vapor. Yet one question remained: why were the copper pipes cold? The answer waited beneath the conservatory, inside the boiler room. Normally, the heating system created powerful upward air currents. Those currents carried dangerous vapor harmlessly toward the roof vents. Shutting down the boiler kept the poisonous mist low. It gathered around Harrow as he leaned over the orchid. The sealed glass walls trapped the toxin completely around him. Voss searched the boiler room for signs of recent activity. A fresh black oil stain marked the main control wheel. Nearby, dark blue wool thread clung to a rough bolt. Evelyn wore red, crane gray, and Thomas wore brown. Only Clara had arrived wearing a dark blue wool coat. Voss wondered how Clara entered the restricted boiler room. The housekeeper's missing keys supplied the next crucial clue. One returned key carried soft white wax within its grooves. Someone had pressed it into wax, creating an exact copy. Police searched Clara's desk and found unused ceiling candles. One candle showed the impression of a long iron key. Clara copied the boiler key without permanently taking it. Still, she argued that many servants used sealing wax daily. Her confidence held until Voss revealed the shattered watch. Clara's eyes moved toward the clock before she could stop. The watch marked Clara's planned alibi, not Harrow's death. At 11:43, a maid supposedly visited Clara upstairs. The maid remembered visiting, but could not confirm the minute. Clara had stopped Harrow's watch to create a false timeline. She wanted everyone believing Harrow died while she was upstairs. In truth, the poison trap was prepared hours earlier. Clara's location during Harrow's death proved absolutely nothing. Voss unfolded financial letters discovered inside Harrow's locked desk. They proved Clara helped create his most valuable formula. Harrow planned to claim it and dismiss her unpaid. He also intended to destroy every record of her contribution. Clara had worked silently for years behind Harrow's celebrated name. Humiliation and anger gradually hardened into calculated revenge. Before dinner, Clara copied the key and entered the basement. She disabled the heating and filled the reservoir with toxin. Then she replaced the orchid label and awaited Harrow's demonstration. His pride would make him press the hidden switch. She knew locked doors would suggest an impossible outside killer. The staged watch was meant to complete her perfect defense, but the wrong flower name exposed the replacement label. Cold pipes revealed the heating system's deliberate shutdown. Crystalline residue proved poison, traveled through the hidden mist device. The copied key, blue thread, and wax identified Clara. Before everyone, Voss calmly reconstructed each step of the crime. Clara listened silently while snow struck the library windows. Her controlled confidence slowly collapsed into exhausted, silent defeat. She admitted the plan but refused to call it madness. Police escorted Clara across.
The Midnight Orem left Blackridge Station beneath freezing rain. Its 12 carriages vanished toward the mountains after 11. Among the passengers traveled billionaire financier Gideon Rook. He occupied cabin 9, the train's most private suite. Before departure, Gideon made one terrifying announcement. By sunrise, he would expose a traitor publicly. Detective Mara Voss was traveling in the next carriage. She noticed Gideon board wearing his famous white scarf. His face remained hidden beneath a low black hat. The train entered the mountains exactly at 11:15. At 11:40, every carriage suddenly went dark. The blackout lasted less than 90 seconds. Then cabin 9's emergency bell began ringing continuously. Mara reached the compartment with the conductor. The door was locked firmly from the inside. Through the glass, Gideon's silhouette sat completely still. The conductor used the emergency master mechanism. Gideon Rook was already dead inside the cabin. His famous white scarf covered half his face. A silver chess piece rested beside his hand. His pocket watch had stopped at 11:41. No weapon lay anywhere inside the compartment. The window remained locked against the mountain storm. The connecting door to cabin 10 was bolted. Passengers immediately blamed the 90-second blackout. Someone must have entered when nobody could see. But Mara found that explanation far too convenient. The cabin carpet showed no fresh, wet footprints. Gideon's shoes, strangely, were completely dry. Yet witnesses swore they saw him board outside. Mara examined the body more closely. Something about the white scarf bothered her. Gideon always wore it folded beneath his collar. Tonight it had been wrapped above his chin. The clothing was hiding more than fashion. Mara asked when anyone last saw Gideon's face. Nobody had seen it clearly since departure. At the platform, cameras showed only hat and scarf. Mara's first theory changed completely. Perhaps Gideon never boarded the train alive. The body could have been inside earlier. Cabin 9 was inspected before passengers entered. Mara asked who performed that inspection. Assistant Steward Elias Trent raised one nervous hand. He claimed the room had been completely empty. His uniform looked perfect except for one detail. A brass button was missing near his waist. Mara found a matching button beneath Cabin 9's sofa. Elias said he had cleaned there earlier. Mara searched the cabin's built-in wardrobe. One inner panel showed fresh scratches around its edge. It had been transferred from Gideon's private rail car. Behind the panel was a narrow service cavity. The cavity connected only to a sealed platform hatch, but railway staff could access it before departure. Mara now understood how the body arrived unseen. The impossible murder had started before the train moved. Still, someone impersonated Gideon on the platform. That person needed his coat, hat, and scarf. 3 suspects had access to Gideon's private belongings. His daughter Celeste expected to inherit everything. Business partner Victor Hale faced financial ruin. Personal secretary Rowan Pike knew every daily habit. Elias the steward also handled Gideon's luggage. Each suspect denied wearing the disguise. Mara examined the Silvchis piece next. It was a black king turned upside down. Gideon used chess symbols inside secret messages. His secretary Rowan immediately recognized the code. An inverted king meant betrayal from within. Rowan claimed Gideon left that warning himself. But Mara noticed the piece was perfectly polished. Gideon's private set had visible scratches from years. This king came from the train lounge instead. Someone planted it after the body was discovered. Only 4 people entered before police sealed Cabin 9. Mara, the conductor Elias, and Rowan. The planted clue narrowed the mystery sharply. Rowan suddenly became the obvious suspect. Too obvious, Mara thought. She inspected Gideon's stopped pocket watch. The hands showed 11:41 during the blackout. But the glass contained a tiny station timetable fiber. The watch had been wrapped in paper earlier. Someone staged the time before the train departed. That destroyed the blackout theory completely. Gideon had died long before 11:41. Mara requested Blackridge Station's private platform records. One camera showed Gideon's limousine arriving at 10:20. Another showed Elias moving an oversized wardrobe case. But a third image changed the entire case. The disguised Gideon boarding was slightly shorter. His right hand carried no signet ring. The real Gideon never removed that ring. Mara returned to Rowan's luggage immediately. Inside, she found theatrical adhesive and gray powder. Rowan had disguised himself as Gideon before departure. He boarded publicly to create a false timeline. Then he remained hidden during the first station stop. He reappeared later as himself in another carriage. Elias had unknowingly helped load the wardrobe earlier. The missing button came from ordinary luggage work. Rowan had planted it to redirect suspicion. He also planted the false chess clue. His motive waited inside Gideon's sealed announcement. Gideon planned to expose Rowan's years of embezzlement. By morning, Rowan would lose freedom and fortune. Before everyone, Mara reconstructed the entire deception. The locked cabin was never the true murder scene. The blackout was merely a dramatic distraction. The body had been concealed before departure. The living Gideon seen boarding was Rowan in disguise. Every witness remembered clothing instead of a face. Rowan's greatest trick was making people trust assumptions. When confronted with the ring, makeup, and cameras, he broke. Police arrested him at the next mountain station. At dawn, the midnight Aurum emerged from the snow. Cabin 9 no longer looked supernatural or impossible. It was a stage built from timing and identity. And the dead passenger had never boarded alive.
Blackthorn Hall stood beneath the cold midnight sky. The ancient tower guarded the frozen valley below. The 7 guests gathered there for a private announcement. Their host, Sir Alden, collected rare mechanical wonders. He would reveal a new will and restored clock. Before midnight, Alden climbed alone into the tower, locked the heavy iron door from inside. Lo, the guests felt the great clock trembling. The first chime rolled across the frozen valley. A second followed, then a louder third chime. Everyone expected silence after the 12th midnight strike. Instead, a 13th chime shook the entire tower. Then a sharp cry sounded behind the locked door. Detective Maravos immediately raced up the stairs. The tower key lay visible inside the room. No one answered, so servants broke the lock. Alden sat motionless beneath the enormous clock. The fallen chair lay beside the inspection table. A tiny wound marked his upper chest. Yet no weapon remained anywhere inside the locked room. A narrow window was frozen shut high above ground. These stone walls offered no passage or hidden door. Only the massive clock machinery continued moving behind him. R ordered every guest to remain inside Blackthorn Hall. She first investigated the impossible 13th midnight chime. The clock mechanism could strike only 12 times. But someone had altered it before Alden entered the chamber. Mara found fresh brass dust. The newly oiled screw rested on the stone floor. Alden's spotless gloves proved he never touched the screw. Lara noticed the wound followed a perfectly straight angle. The object had struck directly from the front. But the open floor before Alden was completely empty. Above his chair stood a decorative mechanical knight. It raised a harmless brass lance. Lara watched the clockwork figure slowly reset itself. The one lance section had been polished very recently. Dark stain marked the narrow slot behind it. Someone had turned the knight into a concealed weapon. Lara began questioning suspects inside the candlelit drawing room. Lady Beatrice feared losing her inheritance under Alden's will. She admitted arguing with her father about the will. Edmundshaw hid enormous debts from reckless gambling. He claimed 3 witnesses saw him drinking at midnight. Thomas Pike had maintained the tower clock for decades. Another expert had helped restore it the previous month. Lydia Marlowe, a gifted mechanical engineer. Lydia answered calmly, hiding every trace of nervousness. She said Alden dismissed her before the evening meal. Lydia, all restoration work was complete. Claire asked why fresh brass dust remained inside. Lydia blamed Jonas, then glanced quickly toward him. Lara returned upstairs and examined the clock's strike wheel. 12 deep notches controlled the 12 midnight chimes. A temporary metal tooth sat beside the final notch. That extra tooth had created the 13th strike. Also engaged a secondary gear behind the clock. Thin rods connected that hidden gear to the knight. 13th chime, its lance drove forward. The polished section slid outward like a narrow piston. It extended through the slot toward Alden's chair. A strong spring immediately pulled the lens backward. The hidden weapon had never left the locked room. It simply returned inside the Clockwork Knight afterward. Mara measured the lens against Alden's seated wound. Their alignment matched within the width of one coin. The chair required one exact position for the strike. The fresh scratches proved someone had moved it recently. The clean rectangle revealed its original place farther left. The killer positioned it directly before the hidden lens. The mechanism alone could not identify its maker. Mara entered the restoration workshop beside the tower. The drawer held several custom-made brass gear teeth. One empty compartment matched the tooth inside the clock. The file bore fresh brass residue. Nearby, Mara found a spool of black spring wire. The same wire controlled the lense's automatic return. Lee Jonas admitted he and Lydia shared the workshop. Either restorer could have prepared the deadly modification. Mara lifted the oily screw carefully with tweezers. The tiny fiber remained trapped beneath its damaged head. On magnification, the fiber proved dark green wool. It wore a rough brown work jacket. Lydia alone wore a distinctive dark green wool coat. They argued old fibers could remain inside the machinery. Mara calmly acknowledged that her explanation was possible. Then Mara produced a sealed contract from Alden's papers. It transferred Lydia's patent rights without any payment. Lydia had confronted Alden after discovering his betrayal. He threatened to destroy her career if challenged. Left his office furious yet carefully controlled. Mara noticed the ceremonial clock key nearby. Each night, Alden placed it on the inspection table. That evening, the key rested on the opposite side. Someone familiar with his habits rearranged everything precisely. Lady's notebook contained sketches of Alden's nightly routine, marked the chair key and lamp positions. But one important page had been deliberately torn out. La shaded the next sheet, revealing pressure marks. The hidden impression showed the modified mechanical knight. It included the extra tooth and retracting spring. Mara gathered the guests and reconstructed the murder. Before dinner, Lydia secretly entered the tower workshop. She installed the temporary tooth inside the strike wheel. Then she modified the lens and repositioned the chair. Later, Alden entered alone and locked the iron door. They sat down and placed the clock key nearby. Alden waited beneath the clock face as midnight approached. The 13th chime activated Lydia's hidden secondary gear. Light struck once, then instantly retracted its lens. Downstairs, witnesses believed Lydia could not be responsible. But brass dust, green wool, and drawings remained. Lydia's confidence collapsed when Mara revealed the notebook. She admitted preparing the mechanism over several weeks. Police escorted Lydia through the snow before sunrise. Behind them, the ancient gears continued turning calmly. The locked tower contained no ghost or invisible assassin. Only gears, timing, and one carefully positioned chair. The 13th chime was never an accidental mistake. It was the deadly moment Lydia had engineered.
Ashcombe Manor opened its portrait gallery only once each year. That winter night rained every window with silver streams. 20 ancestral faces watched the invited guests enter in silence. Their host was Victor Lang, a ruthless collector of stolen masterpieces. He promised to reveal the truth behind his most valuable portrait. The painting showed a pale woman wearing a black pearl necklace. Local servants called her the Widow of Ashcombe Hall. They believed anyone who unveiled her at midnight would soon die. Victor laughed at the legend and dismissed every frightened warning. Before midnight, he entered the portrait gallery completely alone. He carried one envelope, one candle, and a Gary's. Then he locked the heavy oak door from the inside. The guests waited in the adjoining ballroom beneath fading music. At 12, a bell rang once from inside the sealed gallery. A moment later, Victor screamed and something heavy struck the floor. Detective Mara Voss reached the locked door before anyone else. The key remained visible inside beneath the brass lock. Servants broke the door while thunder rolled across the manor. Victor sat lifeless in a carved chair before the unveiled portrait. His candle still burned beside the sealed envelope on a table. One hand rested against the chair's carved wooden lion. A tiny puncture marked the inside of his right wrist. No blade, needle, or poisoned container could be found nearby. The gallery windows were latched and painted shut decades earlier. Every portrait frame remained fixed against the solid stone wall. The strange black pearl painting appeared to be watching the body. Several guests whispered that the legendary widow had claimed another victim. Mara ignored the superstition and examined the chair. The carved lion's mouth contained a narrow, polished opening. Inside it, she discovered one fresh drop of amber liquid. Mara measured the opening against the puncture on Victor's wrist. The two positions aligned perfectly when his arm rested naturally. But no weapon remained inside the lion's mouth. Only a thin metal channel disappeared into the chair's wooden back. The detective followed the channel toward the floor beneath the chair. Fresh scratches showed the chair had recently been moved forward. Someone had positioned Victor in one exact place before midnight. Mara then examined the curtain cord beside the mysterious portrait. The blue silk cord had been replaced with newer material. Several fibers were trapped inside a brass pulley above the frame. Pulling the cord would unveil the painting at midnight. But it also moved something hidden beneath the floorboards. Mara removed one loose board behind the carved chair. Below waited a narrow spring wire and sliding steel needle. The needle connected directly to the lion's concealed metal channel. When the curtain cord moved, the spring drove the needle forward. The point entered Victor's wrist through the carved lion's mouth. A second spring immediately pulled the needle back beneath the floor. It simply returned to its hiding place after delivering poison. Mara collected the liquid and confirmed a fast-acting botanical toxin. Someone had prepared the entire mechanism before Victor entered alone. The questioning began inside Ashcombe Manor's long mirrored ballroom. Celeste Lang, Victor's widow, wore silver and showed little grief. Victor planned to remove her completely from his new will. Marcus Lang, his younger brother, had recently lost a fortune. He claimed Victor refused every request for financial help. Owen Price, the gallery curator, feared an approaching criminal investigation. Several painting his care had suspicious ownership records. The final suspect was Elise Rowan, Victor's private art restorer. She wore a dark violet stained with traces of pigment. Elise said she left the portrait gallery before sunset. Mara asked who had replaced the blue curtain cord. Owen claimed Victor ordered the replacement 3 days earlier. Elise quietly said she had never touched the new cord. The detective noticed wax beneath one of Elise's fingernails. Elise explained that restorers wax on antique frame. Her answer was reasonable, but her hands began to tremble. Mara returned to the gallery and opened Victor's sealed envelope. Inside was a prepared speech about the Black Pearl portrait. Victor intended to announce that the painting was an extraordinary forgery. The speech accused Elise of creating it without his knowledge. Mara found this convenient story almost impossible to believe. Victor had purchased the painting secretly only 6 months earlier. Financial records showed he paid Elise large unexplained amount. He had ordered the forgery and planned to sell it overseas. When investigators approached, he decided Elise would take the blame. The speech would protect his reputation and destroy her career. Elise now possessed anger, opportunity, and expert restoration. But Mara still needed evidence connecting her to the mechanism. The answer waited inside the portrait's heavy wooden frame. One corner contained a recent patch of violet-colored filler. The filler matched material used exclusively in Elise restoration kit. Behind the patch, Mara found a tiny tunnel through the frame. The blue cord wire passed through that tunnel toward the floor. Someone had disguised the mechanical connection as restoration work. A small knot joined the cord to the hidden trigger wire. The knot was known as a conservator's binding hitch. Elise had demonstrated that exact knot in her restoration handbook. Still, she argued that other experts could copy her technique. Mara agreed and revealed the final clue from Victor's candle. A faint violet fingerprint marked the candle's brass holder. The same pigment covered the cuff inside Elise's dark coat. Elise had moved the candle while preparing the chair and mechanism. She had placed it so Victor would sit in the correct position. Before everyone, Mara reconstructed the locked room murder carefully. Elise entered the gallery during the afternoon restoration period. She installed the needle springs and wire beneath the floor. Then she moved the carved chair into the weapon's precise path. She replaced the curtain cord and connected it to the trigger. That night, Victor entered and locked the door behind himself. He sat down, lit the candle, and opened his paired. At midnight, he pulled the cord to unveil the famous portrait. The hidden mechanism drove the poisoned needle into his wrist. The needle retracted before his body struck the chair. The bell rang because Victor's falling hand hit its table. Everyone outside believed the portrait's curse had killed him. Elise remained in the ballroom, surrounded by perfect witnesses. But wax violet filler pigment knot told another story. Elise stared at Victor's false accusation inside the opened envelope. Her controlled expression slowly collapsed into exhausted fury. She confessed that Victor had planned to sacrifice her completely. Police escorted her from Ashcombe Manor before the rain ended. The guests avoided looking toward the black pearl portrait. Mara remained behind and closed its curtain without touching the cord. The gallery contained no cursed ghost or murderous painted widow. It contained one Ford masterpiece and one carefully engineered trap. Victor had created the lie that finally gave Elise her motive. But the smallest restoration mark revealed how the murder worked. By dawn, every ancestral face seemed less frightening than before. The true monster had never lived inside the portrait at all.
That night, a violent storm swallowed the isolated Blackwood Manor. Rain hammered the windows while thunder shook its ancient stone walls. Inside, pale yellow lamps barely touched the endless shadowed corridors. Then a strange crash echoed from the master's private study.
A frightened maid hurried toward the sound and tried the door. It would not move because it was locked from the inside. She called the others, and together they forced the heavy door. What waited beyond it silenced every person in the hallway.
The master sat motionless beside his desk, already dead. Loose papers covered the carpet like fragments of a broken secret. A drinking glass lay overturned near one trembling hand. Beside the chair, a large pool of water reflected the firelight. A tiny wound marked the center of the victim's chest.
It was small, clean, and deep enough to kill instantly. Yet no knife, needle, or weapon could be found anywhere. The study door remained locked, and the windows were firmly sealed. Even the room's only key was lying inside the study. A murder had occurred where no murderer could possibly enter.
Before midnight, Detective Elias Ward arrived through the pouring rain. He removed his wet coat and silently studied every frightened face. Unlike the others, he did not begin with the body. His attention settled first on the mysterious water beside the chair.
The overturned glass could not have held such a large amount. Rainwater was impossible because the window frame remained completely dry. Therefore, the water had appeared after the room was locked. Detective Ward knelt beside the victim and examined the clothing.
The hole in the shirt was narrow, smooth, and unusually precise. Something sharp had pierced straight through cloth, flesh, and bone. But the weapon itself had vanished without leaving a single fragment. How could a
The
killer
woman in
remove it
red
from a
admitted
sealed
arguing
room?
with the victim earlier.
That question turned every
She
witness
claimed
into a
she'd left the
possible
study
suspect.
long before the fatal moment. An older man confessed that money had damaged their friendship. Other relatives insisted they remained inside their bedrooms during the storm.
The maid said she only delivered tea before hearing the crash. One young man, however, could barely control his nervous breathing. He avoided the detective's eyes and answered every question too quickly. His name was Adrian Vale, the victim's troubled young nephew.
Each witness offered an explanation that sounded reasonable on its own, but the detective sensed that everyone was hiding something important. The master had recently changed several legal and financial documents. Names were crossed out, signatures replaced, and payments suddenly canceled.
Someone inside the manor was about to lose everything. More than one person had wished the master permanently silent. Detective Ward returned to the study and closed the door. He inspected the lock, the hinges, and every wooden panel. No wire had turned the key from outside the room.
No hidden passage waited behind the bookshelves or painted walls. The windows had not opened, and the chimney was far too narrow. Then the detective slowly raised his eyes toward the ceiling. Above the chair was a square iron ventilation grill.
The victim's position stood almost perfectly beneath that dark opening. For the first time, the impossible murder gained a possible direction. Ward requested the manor's original architectural plans from the basement. The ventilation shaft connected the study to an unused upper service area.
A narrow storage loft ran directly above the locked room. Near that loft, investigators discovered an old wooden ladder. Most of its steps carried a thick blanket of undisturbed dust, but several marks had been freshly rubbed by hands and shoes.
Someone had climbed that ladder during the night of the murder.
The dust near the ventilation cover had also been recently disturbed. A faint shoe pattern appeared beside the edge of the shaft. Detective Ward removed the grill and searched the dark passage. Deep inside, cold drops of water clung to the metal. They were too clean and too cold to be storm water.
Scratches showed the grill had been opened, then quickly replaced. Now the water, the wound, and the ceiling became connected. But one final question remained. What had traveled through the shaft? The detective searched the kitchen, laundry room, and servants' hall.
Inside the freezer, he found a strangely shaped empty mold. It was long, narrow, and pointed like a deadly spike. Fresh frost proved that something had recently been frozen inside it. In the laundry room, damp clothing had been hidden beneath towels.
No one admitted wearing those clothes outside during the storm, yet the fabric carried cold moisture and gray ventilation dust. The stains perfectly matched the residue inside the upper shaft. Then Ward examined Adrian Vale's shoes beside the fireplace.
Their soles carried the same pattern found on the dusty ladder. At last, every separate clue formed one complete and terrible method. The murder weapon had never been removed from the locked room. It had simply destroyed itself after completing its deadly purpose.
Adrian had created a sharp spike entirely from frozen water. He kept it hidden inside the freezer until the final moment. Every evening, the master worked beneath the same ventilation opening. He also locked the study door to protect his private documents.
Adrian understood that habit and turned it into the perfect trap. During the thunder, he carried the ladder into the upper loft. The storm concealed every footstep, scrape, and movement above the room. He opened the grill and lowered the frozen spike into position.
From the shaft, he struck without ever entering the study.
The weapon pierced the victim's chest and caused immediate death. Adrian withdrew his tools, replaced the grill, and hid the ladder. He believed the locked door would make the crime supernatural. But he had forgotten the blazing fireplace beside the victim.
Heat slowly melted the weapon after it fell into the room. The ice became water and gathered beside the dead man's chair. That explained the missing weapon and the strangely clean wound. It also explained why the pool was larger than the glass.
Before the household, Detective Ward reconstructed the entire impossible crime. He showed them the locked door, sealed windows, and ceiling grill. He revealed the disturbed ladder, the freezer mold, and damp clothing. He placed Adrian's shoe beside the matching print in the dust.
Together, they created only one path, leading directly to Adrian. The young man's face drained of color as the truth emerged. The altered documents proved his inheritance was about to disappear. The master had threatened to expose debts Adrian could never repay.
Anger, fear, and desperation had shaped his cold-blooded plan. He trusted melting ice to erase every trace of the weapon. He never imagined that melted water would become the strongest evidence. Confronted with the dust, shoes, clothing, and freezer, Adrian surrendered.
Police led him from the manor before the storm had ended. The remaining guests watched in silence, shocked by his hidden hatred. Near dawn, the rain weakened and the clouds began to separate. Detective Ward stepped outside as sunlight touched the ancient roof.
Behind him, the locked room no longer held any mystery. No ghost had crossed the walls, and no magic erased the weapon. There had only been careful planning, frozen steel like ice and heat. A deadly spike had vanished, but its water remained behind.
And sometimes, what disappears becomes the clearest evidence of all.